What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York, joined by my co-host today. You already know the one and only Mr. Sean Fitzgerald from LAF Advisors. Look at him kissing the crowd there. Sean, what's going on, sir? How are you?
Man, I got a whole bunch going on. I'm super excited to have my first real conversation with the flood guru himself. I'm in a bit of a coastal area here in New York, on Long Island specifically. So there's a lot I want to talk to Chris about. So I'm excited. I'm excited that we finally got connected.
Well, like Sean said, we've got the flood guru on the podcast today. Mr. Chris Greene is joining us. Unfortunately, I'm throwing this curveball at Sean, though. I don't want to talk anything about flood. I want to talk about outdoor cooking, barbecue, smoking meats, Blackstone. That's what I want to talk about here. I love my Blackstone, Chris, and I am living through all the different tools that you have in your toolbox when it comes to outdoor cooking. So we're going to side the insurance for just 2 minutes is all I want, Sean. That's all I want here. And I want to talk about all that. But Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How many
my number one lead generator?
How many different outdoor grills, smokers, tools, we'll call them, do you have?
Currently 11.
It's incredible.
Wow. I just got a little old Weber over here.
Yeah,
my dog keeps chewing through them, so I keep having to take them back to RecTech, but RecTech keeps repairing for me for free because their customer service is phenomenal.
There you go. Okay. Hey, I tell you, I'm just in the beginning stages. I've got my Blackstone, and I'm looking to get into the smoker world, so we'll have to talk about that offline. But I love my little Blackstone for what it does.
I just did blackened chicken on mine last night.
I saw that video. But anyways, that's all I needed, Sean. Thank you. So everybody go check out Chris's Facebook for all your outdoor cooking needs and flood insurance as well. But Chris, for anybody that's learning you for the first time, tell us about yourself, and then we'll get into what you do and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So my name is Chris Greene. I'm president and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru. I've been the owner of the Flood Insurance Guru technically since the end of 2018 when I transitioned from a traditional independent insurance agency owner to doing flood only. I was an independent agency owner for about 4 years. Couldn't really get the income up. We just kind of felt like a hamster in a wheel, and people kept finding out that my actual master's degree was in flood mitigation. So I started floodinsuranceguru.com as a joke. I just wanted to start the conversation on flood, and one day I had to decide, hey, am I going to be a generalist or are we going to go full-fledged? And doing that, what happens is I met with Nick Ayers. I was in his course, Made to Look Video. We were doing a 30-day video challenge, and I was shooting all these videos in an auto and home, and I shot one sitting in my daughter's dollhouse on roof damage and how the engagement was there. And I said, you know what? We're going to do one flood video every day for a year. We're going to travel the entire year in 19 doing it. And so through 19, I started blogging, I started podcasting. At the end of 19, I was like, look, we're going flood only, and we're walking away from a $1 million book of business, which is what we did. But what geared all that is actually back in 2012 when I went to buy a house in a flood zone. And the real estate company didn't know what they were doing. The lender didn't know what they were doing. Even the insurance company I worked for didn't. They're like, oh, your premium's going to be $3,000. Should have been $300. I later did a flood zone change on that property, and I've been helping people overcome those same obstacles for the last 15 years.
Wow. Okay. So you went from an IA to Scratch flood only agency.
Went from captive to independent, and then basically from a traditional independent to flood only independent, and then from basically an independent flood to a wholesaler to an MGA, now to a flood consulting company and a flood CE company as well.
Stephen, you go.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Thank you. So let's just, before we even get into flood, can we talk about open up the Scratch Independent Agency and just bring us back to those days, because that's a majority of our listeners here on the Scratch Agency podcast. So before we get into the multiple different agencies that you've kind of opened and started here, what were those beginning days like when you were opening that traditionalist agency?
Let me tell you, if I had to do it all over, I probably shouldn't have been doing that because I had no business opening an independent agency. I didn't know it from scratch, but I got tired of the captive controlling my paycheck. I got tired of them controlling the things I could do. And I was like, I just adopted my daughter. She's 2 months old. I said, look, if I don't take this chance, how can I teach my daughter to take that chance? So that's exactly what I did. I didn't take a paycheck for 14 months. And my wife was only working part-time at the time. We have a 2-month-old. And so literally it was just how much can I produce each month those first couple of years just to keep the lights on. And so that's what the first couple of years really looked like. And I did a lot of non-standard with auto dealers too. I told someone, hey, if I would have figured out the fee game back then, things probably would have been a whole lot easier. I mean, or if I would have figured out, hey, you got to pick a poison and go after it. If you can do really well here. But it really is a struggle when you're starting. When I tell people, especially people who are just getting into insurance, I said, look, go work for someone if you can, because what you don't realize is being a new business owner and being a new licensed insurance, I mean, that's a double-edged sword. You're learning so much those first 3 years that your head's never really above water, much less as a business owner as it is an insurance agent. Am I advising the customer right? Hey, did I make payroll?
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, when did you decide, hey, it's time to go 100% flood? Like, I mean, you must have been
2019 when I started doing these videos. I was like, the messages kept showing up in Messenger. Hey, well, you should have video on this, or do you have a video on this? And I take it back to said the Nicholas Ayers with Made You Look video and Marcus Sheridan what They Ask You Answer, and then Ryan Hanley's 100 videos 100 days. Those are really the big three mentors that I learned on that. And what happened is we started shooting these videos every day for a year. We get to the end of the year, we got all these questions, so we're going to keep it going.
Well, Chris, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to dive deep here. You take those videos, where are you posting them?
I posted them on YouTube at the time.
Okay.
Then I started blogging with them, and then I started embedding them into the blog. And then I started throwing a podcast with a blog, which basically a lot of times was just the audio of the video, but Google wasn't picking up the text in the video. And so that was an easy way to rank on Google for lead generation.
Gotcha.
Now, years later, I picked up something called Vidyard, which is like a Wistia for your website. And so now I store all 1,500 of those videos inside a learning center on our website as well.
Okay. So if you and I asked Ryan Hanley this question when he started Rogue, what percentage of your leads for flood specifically, when you opened that agency, came from internet leads?
Absolutely zero at first. We were just getting the questions.
Yeah.
But what happened is the majority of our leads were coming from insurance agents. In fact, most of them still do. But what happened is when I started answering these questions, people weren't picking up the phone saying, can I get a quote? They were picking up the phone and saying, hey, can I go ahead and give you my credit card information? Because you've already answered my questions through the blog, through the video. You sent me a video proposal that explained everything. I'm ready to buy. You've taken all, my questions off the table. And it was at that time that I discovered, if we keep doing this, just I don't want to say how easy it is, but we take a 2-month sales process and we sometimes turn it into 2 hours, 2 days. I mean, heck, our average age of our subscriber on YouTube is 72 years old, and they've watched 5 videos before they call us.
Wow.
But then from a referral partner standpoint,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Your content shows me that I'm in the right place. The questions that you're answering that nobody else has either the answers to, or they're not willing just to take the time to answer them.
Yeah.
Tells me that this is where I should send my clients. And so we started doing a lot with captive agents, and then independent kind of just took off, I'd say 2020. And we ended up developing as a wholesaler because of our educational background in flood with Lloyd's of London and some other reinsurance companies. And then we naturally kind of developed MGA kind of by accident that we operate now as well.
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation because you have a few people, right? Yourself, Ryan Hanley, for example, who have had great success with video. And I don't think there's any question that it works now. I mean, clearly it works, right? And it's almost like, why isn't everyone doing it, right? My question to you is, Chris, how many videos do you think it took, and how long do you think it took? I know this is a very general question, before you started getting traction with the flood questions. Did it take 20 videos, 300 videos?
It took us about
I'm kind of curious. 3 months. Okay.
3 months of consistency, right? Every day, you said?
Yes.
Every day, that's a lot.
Look, man, you get this thing going downhill. Like, as long as you keep doing it, it just gets faster and faster. But the great thing is, like, referral partner says, hey, I don't understand the difference here. Well, here's the article from the Learning Center and a video we did. Oh, wait, the person who's helping me, that's the person in the video. Well, that's the one I can trust. And it's one of the reasons why, and I know Ryan Hanley's a big fan of this, and Hanley, everybody writes. It's one of the reasons why everybody on our team does video. Everybody writes blogs. And so that they can share with a customer on an article, on a video they did. And I said, wait, that's the person behind the email helping me. There's somebody real there. There's that emotional connection. And all of a sudden, this barrier comes down. Just like when I tell people, look, generally you won't see me shoot in front of a green screen. If I'm in Arizona addressing an issue, I'm standing in Arizona shooting that video.
That's cool.
And people see that landmark, and they're like, wait a minute, he's in my neighborhood answering my questions. That's somebody I can trust.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And then you could even run ads to that town specifically. That's a great point you brought up as far as this is something I just started doing, is being more consistent with my blogging, but based off of very common questions that I get at my agency. This way, when it does come up, I can explain it in an email and say, hey, by the way, check out this article we wrote about this subject specifically. FEMA flood versus, a private plan, those types of questions. So I think that's a great point. So you have 1,500 videos.
Yeah, we finished 1,500 videos in 1,500 days a couple months ago.
You still pumping them out?
I am, but only like 2 or 3 a week.
Okay.
But right now I'm more intentional in my video. Look, it was great. I was answering all these questions. Here's the problem with that. There's generally not a lot of strategy there. So you're taking all these questions, you're answering them, that's great. But then it kind of goes out and, on your website on YouTube, nobody's viewing it because you're not really going to the consumer on what they're looking for. And so that's one thing I've gone back now. Hey, we're more intentional. For example, what area we really like to focus on, because it's really good revenue generator for us, as multifamily investors. So we are obsessing over questions from insurance agents and investors of, hey, how do we help the investors through this process? Like, for example, I just shot a video today of what does flood zone AE mean for a multifamily investor? Is flood insurance required? Is it expensive? And can I change the flood zone?
Yep. Yeah, Chris, I wonder how much plays into it that you're hyper niche, right? I'm going to use myself as an example here, and because I'm not perfect at it, but I create some blogs and some videos, but it's not a very niche specific. One day it's about home coverage, one day it's about contractors, one day it's about flood, and it's a little all over. And I wonder if doing it that way, instead of it taking 3 months, it's probably going to take 2 years because it's not as niche. You know what I mean? How important do you think that was that you went super niche to your success?
I wouldn't necessarily go in super niche. I mean, of course, we're consistently blogging on those questions. Yeah. But you also have to think about this. We're not getting a business lead like someone else is. We're not getting an auto lead. We're not getting a home lead. So being non-niche, honestly, I think is easier.
Okay.
Because look, you've got these other areas you can address every day. We're addressing just one area. Imagine having to do that for 5 years. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, so eventually
you could have somebody in your office that is blogging and doing video on those niches each week. Still hitting it.
Yeah.
I got you.
So I know Sean wants to dive deep into the flood stuff itself, but before we do that, let's back up. You said it all kind of started in 2012 when you were buying a house in a flood zone. And we talked about that and the why behind that. For somebody that's looking to get into a niche, and I think everybody has their different answers on how you should describe a niche. Like, do you have the right access, the passion, all these different things. But for someone that's maybe developed that niche of what they want to do, how long do you think you should take preparing for that? Right? Like, how long, do you think you should have so many videos banked up to be able to do that, or so much knowledge banked up, or blogs or whatever? If you want to attack that niche and attack it good, it seems consistency is the key, which we would all agree with, I'm sure. How long would you say the preparation should be for that, for your average traditional agency that's going to try to attack a niche?
Well, it depends. Like, for example, with us, where we were walking away from everything else, and we basically walked away from our PNC book. If you're going to have that PNC book for the next 5 years where you can slowly adjust, you don't have to have that much planning. But if you're doing like what we were doing, you really did have to go in pretty deep. So you can kind of phase yourself away. Or if you're going to keep and you're just adding this niche, just to give yourself, I'll say, a good 6 months to kind of get things going, understanding the market access. How's the market access changing? Like in this hard market, we have a 50% non-renewal rate right now. So when people say, hey, I've got it tough. Now, here's the thing, though. We haven't lost a single customer because we're able to go and get at other markets that other people can't have access to a lot of times, because either they're not a wholesaler, they're not MGA, they're not helping the private companies build the flood products like we are. So we've got those relationships. So what I tell our team, it's my job to go and build these carrier relationships, build these reinsurance relationships, and show them how we're looking at risk completely differently. Like on our website, where we built a flood risk tool where we can tell someone how close to water they are. We can tell them it's going to take roughly 2 hours for water to rise from their garage to their house. So they need to put contents in this part of the house to protect it more. Using tools like that to show people, hey, here's the risk, here's how we're going to lower the risk, and here's how we're going to lower those flood insurance premiums long term for you, helping you increase property value, whether it's on a commercial property or residential.
That's awesome, man. How do people get access to that tool? They got to call you?
No, they go straight on our website right now. Now I'm changing some data companies on there because of the way some of the data companies were restricting us. So I'm working with my developer to change some things on there. But we're also getting ready to build a report where they can actually download the full report, sends it to them. Just like when someone comes to us and we're looking at building a house with them, like, hey, I want to build a house at this area. We charge them a fee. But what they do is it gives them an hour of my time, and they have a full report when we're done of, hey, here's the level you're going to build at. Here's how it's going to change the risk. Here's how it's going to change the requirement. And here's how it's going to change long-term premiums. Here's the estimate we see on your property value immediately.
Cool. Very cool. Chris, let's talk about the National Flood Insurance Program versus private flood. Okay. What, just so I can understand a little bit more about what you have going on over there, what percentage do you think of your book is NFIP plans versus private plans? If you
NFIP is probably less than 5%.
Okay. And why is that?
One reason is, let's just take you're in New York, so you can easily understand this. Think about $250,000 for a house on Long Island. I mean, a house that's 2,500 square feet. It ain't going nowhere.
Nope.
Which is where a lot of private kicks in. But I also want to tell people replacement costs and contents. That's something NFIP doesn't currently offer. Additional living expenses. That's something NFIP doesn't offer. NFIP also doesn't offer what's called lock rates. Some carriers say, look, if you're willing to pay 2 years up front, we'll lock the rate for 2 years. Well, in this kind of current market, that could be huge.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer things like that. When we get into commercial properties, 500K is really not going anywhere. But the thing is, when these business owners suffer a loss, going from 100% occupancy to 0%, how are they going to protect the loss of rent? And that's what private does. When we've gone out and kind of built this special business interruption product to protect these business owners during this flood of keeping money coming in so they don't go bankrupt.
Okay. So I guess it's sort of an argument. If someone brought up the argument, I'm curious how you would combat this. And you probably already know where I'm going with this. If someone said, oh, well, I want to be with an NFIP plan because it's backed by the government.
I tell people that is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
If that's what you decide on, here are what the policy exclusions are. Here's how things are paid out in the basement. Here's generally what pays out on a policy if you're not insuring for 80%. So absolutely, you can go with that plan. These are just the things you need to know about that plan that may not be covered, that the majority of people across the country are disappointed on after a claim.
Gotcha. And Chris, I'm sorry we're going deep into coverages here, but I think this is, usually we don't get this technical, but I think it could bring some value to the audience. From NFIP to private carriers, what is the difference with the contents? Go into that a little bit as far as replacement cost and basement and all that stuff.
And I'll give you an example. For example, in the basement, NFIP says, hey, we're only going to cover things that make the building safe. That's possibly a water pump if you're lucky. But it's usually a furnace, air conditioner, circuit breaker, staircase. I mean, they're not even covering things like carpet. And let's just take New York, for example. There's a lot of basements. And these people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars finishing out this basement. Let's take the New York flood where everybody was disappointed when they didn't know they had coverage because the agent didn't tell them they didn't have coverage because they didn't read the forms of exactly how basements are covered with NFIP. So now these customers are out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Think about the recovery to the customer, but also think about the exposure recovery to the agency now.
Yeah. So how many
privates will cover that, but the privates, I feel like, are more black and white about it. It's like, we'll cover this. Yeah, we won't. It's right here. Or, hey, we'll cover up to $10,000 in contents compared to them basically covering nothing.
And Chris, do you find that it's an issue with lenders that let's say it's a new purchase, they won't accept insurance from a private carrier?
Not anymore, because as of December 2022, all banks accept private flood insurance now.
Wow. Okay. Good to know.
I got a blog and a video on my website as well.
Oh, hey. Okay.
What was the reason behind that change?
we've been fighting for that change for 5 years. It really came down to really FHA, VA, USDA was government loans. And what happened is FHA does not issue mortgages, they insure them, which means they rule on things differently. And literally, let's see, they went into public comment, I feel back in like 2018, and they did not make a ruling until November of 2022.
Gotcha.
And so when they finally made that ruling, it gave it a month, said, hey, December 22nd, 2022, we will accept it. And so we still had some banks, as of last month, say, hey, we can't accept this. And all we do is we sent them the blog and the video we did. We had it linked directly to the government bulletin. And they're like, oh, great. Thanks for sending that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So the biggest difference between NFIP and FEMA, just from what I'm gathering here and a little research I did before this, is NFIP is backed by the government. And I mean, that to me, that sounds like the only benefit. I mean, have you seen a case where a private carrier has gone under and they couldn't pay out the claim?
Not paid out the claim, but I would say this, for the majority of what I have seen is the claims are actually handled quicker with private than they are FEMA because you don't have as much red tape. You know, you're not dealing with this, honestly, a lot many claims in many situations. The difference here, though, is with a lot of privates, you cannot dispute a claim. That's part of, the surplus in most states, the due diligence of, hey, by basically going with an E&S, you're losing your right to appeal this claim. Well, FEMA gives you 60 days to appeal a claim if you don't like how something's gone. And we explain that to customers each time. Look, there's, we've never seen this happen, but we do have to explain it could happen. Did it happen during Ian? No, we still didn't see it happen during Ian. We still saw every claim paid out during Ian.
Okay, interesting. All right, so also too with the private flood, I think is and I think you might have touched on this.
About with NFIP, no matter where you go, whatever write your own carrier, if you go to NFIP Direct, it's all going to be the same.
It's the same. Yep.
So what I tell agencies is, look, let's make it easier on your staff. Don't have 10 write your own carriers that you're using. Just take all that business with one.
Yep.
And whoever it is, the easiest to deal with. Personally, for us, we love Right Flood. That's who we use for all our NFIP stuff. And the thing is they make it really easy for us. If we have a claims question, we can call. We can get answered very quickly. Sure, we have access to other ones, but I'm like, there's no reason there. They were signing into this system, we're signing into that system. It just creates more friction for our team and for our customers. Now, on the private side, every private company is going to look at it. And if you have a policy that says, hey, it's been non-renewed by Lloyd's, it doesn't mean it's non-renewed by Lloyd's. It means that maybe the contract with that MGA or wholesaler changed because there's about 20 different Lloyd's cover holders now, syndicates, and all these different contracts out there. And so what it just means is that the contract that they currently had on that risk is no longer available. That doesn't mean that you can't go to another marketplace inside Lloyd's and get a private policy. And that's something we fight with a lot of agents and customers, help them understand. It wasn't Lloyd's that non-renewed it. It was that particular contract. Lloyd's is not technically an insurance carrier. It's a marketplace.
Gotcha. So I'm still learning the flood stuff. So on the private plan, it's always non-admitted?
Not always, but there's about 5 states right now where some carriers are coming out with a private market now that is admitted. New Jersey, North Carolina, Florida, Texas. It's just very slow going. Palomar actually has an admitted product. I think in about 12 states now. If it fits their risk, the rates are phenomenal. We've used them for several years. They were big in California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and they're slowly moving into areas like South Carolina. So eventually, I think over the next 5 years, you're going to see a decent amount of admitted private flood across the country.
Gotcha.
If you're just trying to, I kind of give them a hard time. It's like, you test your product in the coastal areas first. Why? Like, take the lower risk first. Like, oh, we need the data. I said you do, but you don't need the losses.
Yeah, no, for sure. And those non-admitted, the carrier that's on the paper, you said it's usually a Lloyd's syndicate.
It's usually a Lloyd's syndicate. It may be somebody different, but the reinsurance company wants to tell people, look, don't pay attention too much who the MGA is. Pay attention to who the reinsurance company is because they're the ones who are backing up those claims.
Yep.
That's what you want to look at. Just like when lenders say, hey, we don't see A plus whatever for this MGA is because MGAs are not rated as carriers like that. You need to be looking at how the reinsurance company is rated, and you need to be issuing that. That's all part of what's called the private flood insurance clause, which is a list of things that have to be sent to a bank that says, hey, this is how this policy mirrors the NFIP in order for us to be able to accept it.
Interesting. Okay. And Chris, what do you think is the biggest mistake that you see when you look at someone's flood policy that maybe another agent made or that they didn't catch? Like when you're reviewing someone's flood policy, is there like a common thing that you see and you're like, yep, this is a home run for us because they didn't do XYZ?
Well, one of the big things we see is only doing what the bank requires. Because what they're like, let's just say the bank, oh, it's only a $100,000 loan, so they take out $100,000 in coverage. What they don't realize, it just became an actual cash value policy, so it's actually a $50,000 policy. So now they're on the hook for at least additional 50 grand. Now they got to take out an SBA disaster loan to cover that on a house they're no longer in for the next 30 years.
And why is it only a $50,000 policy? Because of a co-insurance penalty or something?
It's an actual cash value. So FEMA's condition is you have to insure for one of two things: either 80% of the replacement cost, or the full available coverage of, up to $250,000 on residential, or $500,000. If not, it's defaulting to an actual cash value policy. Well, depending on the private company, they may have the same rule, but their rule may be 90%. But you got to read the forms to know that. Because we saw a lot of people that were surprised by claims. Oh, I didn't know I had to insure for 90%. Well, it said it right there. The problem is the agent just doesn't read these forms a lot of times. Oh, I got a private option. Here, issue. They're not truly reading the forms and understanding, hey, how's this going to expose my customer?
So that's exactly where I wanted to go with this conversation. And I think you answered my first question there is how many, what percentage of agents do you think truly have no idea what they're doing when it comes to flood? And what tools can the insurance guru do to help them with that? You said you've morphed into like a wholesaler. How can scratch agents that are listening to this podcast right now that are building a traditional agency, PNC, and all that stuff? What can you do to help from an educational standpoint, or just from a placing business standpoint?
Well, I'll tell you this: from the agent standpoint, it depends usually if they're coastal or they're non-coastal. What we find out, if they're on the coast, usually 80 to 90% of them know what they're doing when it comes to flood. If you're in a non-coastal area where you're just not running across it very often, I'd say that number is probably closer to 30%. Yep. Just because they don't handle it very often.
Yep.
And that's why we serve as the flood service department for a lot of these agencies across the country. It's like, look, it's what I tell people. I said, look, you're never going to make a fortune off a flood insurance policy, but it could cost your agency everything. And that's why we step in and we basically take the E&O exposure off these, and we serve as their flood department. We're helping explain the flood coverage to their customers. We explain that we're an extension of their team. And our team knows that that's why they can't make small mistakes, even to the misspelling of a name, because of how it falls back on that agency. And so a lot of times we just build a link for them. We handle everything for them, and then we just pay them a new business commission, a renewal commission. They don't have to do anything with it.
Gotcha.
Or if they want to be involved, they can be involved too. We do it two different ways. But then from the education standpoint, maybe, hey, I want to handle everything. Great. The learning centers are on our website. It's right there for you. We're putting new content in there every week.
And that's open to everybody. That learning center is open to everybody?
Yep.
Chris, from a mitigation standpoint, is there anything that people can do on the residential side to their property that can help lower the rate?
Yeah, but I will tell you this. You see these windows behind me. With risk rating 2.0, that's pretty much where mitigation was out the window.
Yep.
Like it used to be, we could help someone raise a property and it saves them 40 grand. Now it saves them $50.
Yep.
So from a premium standpoint, we were seeing very little impact now. But what I tell people is from a risk standpoint, we're still seeing the same benefits. Look, yeah, it may not save you on the premium, but how much is it going to save you on losing everything?
Yeah.
When you try to go resell that property, is it on a severe repetitive loss list? Like one that just came across our desk today, the customer's like, look, I'm buying this thing, but I had no idea it had flooded 7 times. I only knew that it flooded once.
Okay. And what about from a commercial standpoint?
Commercial is the same thing. There's really, with commercial, there's a lot of really cool things now. There with wet proofing and dry proofing that they can do. Flood vents. We've got one. There's a severe repetitive loss property, completely destroyed, rebuilt. No one would insure it because no one told the story right. It was actually being rebuilt on 10-foot cement pillars that were water resistant and were redirecting the water. And by doing that, we could show the underwriter, look, here's how the risk is changing. That you're right. No, you're absolutely correct. Nobody told us that.
Okay. All right. I had something else for you here.
Sean, I'm just letting you go through your list because I got something else to bring up, but I know you had
You do.
I know you had quite a list. Well,
I want to. You go.
All right, we can pivot back if we need to. I want to pivot a little bit to building the team at Flood Guru, right? So you were captive, you went independent, then you went hyper on a niche. This is all we're doing. All very bold options, just like starting a scratch agency, just like what we talk about here every week, right? Talk to us about the difference. You built the independent traditional agency, but the difference of building the niche agency. You can't go out and get somebody who's got experience and bring them in and say, this is all we do. This is our language. Talk to us about the wins, the low times during that, and some stuff that the agents here could relate with.
Yeah, like we've hired our first full-time employee in 2020 that they recently left us about 6 months ago, but she was with us for 2 years. They had been with State Farm, for about a year, didn't like that environment. And when I tell them, I said, look, if you come to work with us, I promise me, you will never have to sell anything and your check is never going to be based on the commission of a policy. And that always throws everybody off. And the reason for that is I tell them, I said, look, we are an education company that owns an insurance agency, and we will always take that approach. And for that reason, I'm not paying you commission like all these other agencies are. Instead, I'm paying you the pool of revenue. That revenue might mean me doing a flood zone change. It might mean me teaching a CE class. It might mean us doing a flood policy that maybe has an agency fee on a private policy. Whatever goes in that pool, you're going to get a portion of that at the end of the month, no matter what. If that means you're here handling the policies and I'm out speaking and getting paid to speak, each time I get paid to speak, you're getting a portion of that. Because you're doing the things here that are allowing me to enjoy to do these things and vice versa. And so when I brought team members in, I said, look, I'm not too worried about experience yet. I really need someone with an insurance license, but I really want someone who's had some kind of experience with flood. Maybe it's a flood family member. It's been through a terrible experience. Maybe you lived in Houston during Hurricane Katrina, or during Hurricane. Oh my God, I can't remember now. Harvey, that's what it was.
Yep.
But then you can use that experience to storytell with people. What I want here are storytellers. Yep. I want people to be able to teach these people, here's what the risk is. Here's how we're going to help you lower the risk. If you take the solution you put in place, here's how's your life's going to improve. If you don't, here's how it's not going to improve. I need people who are willing to be on video. I know you're not very good at it right now, but I need you to just be willing to do it. And that's what I need. We need team players. I do not need the best salesperson in the world because of how our leads come in. Instead, I need someone who can just absolutely blow someone away with their willingness to help. And that's what we've gone after.
So, scratch agent that's listening to this right now, I wrote something down. An education company that owns an insurance company, right? You lead with education. You're not putting videos out there that say, we're the absolute best, so call us today right now. Here's the link here. We want your business. We want your business. You're saying, here's how we can help you educate you on this topic. Here's how we can help you and educate this topic. And that's what I try to do too, even with just the PNC stuff that I do. Did you know that it's important to have full glass on your auto policy? Did you know these things? And that's how I sort of get an organic reach there. My question for you is, for the people that are listening to that and want to start taking that approach, where do you start? I think a lot of agents get caught up in, what do I talk about?
We're playing now with Chat GPT and all that. It's super easy. And I actually got this trick from David Carruthers on his podcast the other day. And look, we use Chat GPT all the time to write ebooks, to write their questions. But one thing I think a lot of people don't realize that he was talking about is that, look, your customer's putting into the questions in the Chat GPT of what they're going to ask you before they call you. Why don't you do the same? So either when they call you and they reach out to you, you've got an ebook that already answers the questions of what they should be asking. So when they go down the street, they know what to ask. Now, you've already answered the questions, but when they go down the street and they're asking these questions that either they can't answer them or they're kind of going around them, they look back to you and say, man, that's who I need to deal with. Not only did they tell me what to ask, they gave me the answers. They even gave me an ebook that shows me what to look for everywhere else, but no one else is willing to accept and answer these questions.
Right.
And that's why we do ebooks for everything now. We've got one that's, our first email follow-up to a customer's not, please buy a policy from us. It's like, hey, you received your quote from us last week. As you're going through this process, people have a lot of questions. I know, I was there. I wish I would have known about private flood insurance, 12 years ago when I went through this experience. And that's why I'm including a document in this email for you that's 5 simple questions you need to ask before purchasing flood insurance.
Steven, you got to make an ebook for first-time home buyers. Just saying.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I tell you, and my VA literally makes 5 to 10 ebooks a day.
Now,
That's
okay,
awesome.
so in those ebooks, is it specific to flood insurance information, or are you going around kind of the whole experience of
No,
what
it's
to know?
specific to whatever it is we're addressing. For example, right now it's multifamily investors. Hey, here are 3 things you need to know to increase profitability on your multifamily investment. And those 3 things relate to either flood risk or flood insurance that they don't think about. But you got to learn to talk to the audience. Multifamily investors care about one thing: profitability per door. How do we help them increase profitability per door using insurance? How do we, when they go from that 100% to 0% overnight, how do we keep money in their pockets? Once again, it goes back to profitability per door.
That's good.
Yep, here I
I'm
go.
thinking of a bunch
Spinning
of
around.
I gotta make.
Insurance agents right now in this hard market, one thing I'm meeting with our team every week on is how do we help these agents continue to increase value and revenue with their clients? How do we help them go out there and capture new business? Because they're struggling to get new business right now because they're in defense mode. But we've got to help find a way to help them survive, not just survive this, but thrive. Because I tell people, look, as hard as this market is, it is an optimistic market. Yeah, it is an incredible market to go out and capture new business because you can show people the value. Look, everybody's shopping. It's all about who builds the right emotional connection and who shows the right value.
Agree with that. Chris, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made with this niche, and how did you kind of overcome that?
My biggest mistake, I said, first of all, for me, was I didn't understand the fee game until about 2 years ago. Man, if I would have understood that, I mean, you talking 20
on the non-admitted policies, right?
On the non-admitted, but not only that, on the consulting side as well, like on our CE side, doing these different projects, that could have been a difference of $30,000 to $40,000 in revenue a month. I mean, imagine that starting out. Yeah, going into a niche like that could be a whole lot easier if you're doing some CE, you're consulting on the side. One thing I didn't discover was going to the independent associations and actually doing almost like a retainer with them, where we provide a 3-hour CE for their learning system, and each time someone downloads it, we get a residual.
Very cool.
Because everybody was like, you're crazy if you teach insurance agent CE because you're giving away everything you learn and aren't going to need you one day.
So do you have a only because I write a lot of non-admitted stuff here, but on the more of like on the contractor side and whatnot in New York. Do you have a fee structure, like a plan built out on, hey, if it's private flood over 5,000 in premium, we charge X fee? Like, do you have a structure?
We do on commercial. It's usually 10% of the base premium or $300, whichever one's higher.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it also depends on the state too. For example, in the state of Georgia, we can't charge fees at all. Tennessee's the same way. Michigan, Colorado, Kentucky. There's a few states. So I built in our CRM where it automatically tells our team what fee they can charge in that state based on the automation.
Gotcha.
So our team doesn't even have to think about it. Because when the flood risk comes in, that flood risk data, it's going through like a million different pieces of data on the back end. And our team is only seeing the 5 to 10 pieces of data they need to truly explain a risk to a customer. Yeah. Just like we built our own RCE tool. And so now they can explain to a customer, look, you want to insure for this, but you really need to insure for this. And if you don't, here's what happens in a difference on a loss with an SBA disaster loan. They can have a big impact on you.
What's the team like, and how'd you get to the point where you are today with the team? Are you guys all remote? Are you all over the country? Are you localized in one place? What's it look like?
We've pretty much only been remote since 18. We were in office. I lived in 19. But right now we got 2 team members that are both in Alabama. Actually, both worked in an all-state agency together and kind of came on, got board with us. Cool. Back in February, March. The one that came on February was going to kind of be my office manager. But then our office manager left and she was handling commercial. So now I've pretty much just moved her into our commercial lines account manager. Our office manager now is transitioning into a renewal only position, helping our VAs. And then we're going to be filling a residential flood education position over the next few months.
Very cool.
And then we've got 6 VAs on the back end. So we have a quoter, we have a renewal specialist, we have a content writer, we have a phone person, we have what I call a floater. So like today we got slammed on quotes. So then I could go to the 2 of the other VAs and say, hey, can you help out the quoter? So now instead of being 10 deep on quotes, we're down to 1 deep within 30 minutes.
Wow.
And
6
then
VAs.
they're putting those quotes in the system. They're
Yep.
putting them into what's called PandaDoc, where we built a video proposal system. Our licensed staff reviews them real quick, hits a button, sends out the video proposal to the customer, with the two differences. Here's the replacement cost on your property. Here's the flood score, what we feel like could happen if it actually flooded, the type of damage it could cause. And then they get that. When they view that, the deal is automatically moved from quote sent to quote received. And then it starts following up with them with different ebooks. And then when they respond is when the licensed person then puts their hands back on it, is when that person's ready to have that coverage conversation.
Chris, can we sideline for a quick minute there about that process? Because we like the scratch agent journey. It's like, especially if you're a one-man show and you're building that, it's like, do we sell, or do you build the process and then sell, or do you sell and then build the process as you need to? There's this big debate, this big discussion around all that. I'm sure that process.
It's actually super easy.
Well, and talk to us about that process.
And you build the process after 5.
There it is.
You sell 9 to 5, and then you build the process after 5. So after 5 is when I do the work in our CRM. It's when I'm changing all these different things. Now, from 9 to 5, now, I'm not handling much of the day-to-day flood anymore. I'm handling more of the consulting stuff, floods and changes, that kind of stuff. If our team needs me to have to step in on the commercial. But at night, our team comes in the next morning. They see all these different changes. Oh, man, the system's so much easier now. Those kind of things I'm working on after 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Writing my blogs. I used to get up, and when I first started this, I do a blog and a video at 7 in the morning, had everything edited, ready to go by 9 a.m. And then from 9 to 5, I could start selling.
I feel like it's such a simple formula. And I think I probably have said this on the last 2 episodes now. I think us as agents, we like sometimes overcomplicate things. I know I do.
Sometimes I think we do.
Yeah. And I was talking to Steven about this the other day, and I'm like, why the hell am I here editing a gravity form at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, what am I doing? 9 to 5 should be sales. And it's funny. We just spoke about this with Mike Sharp the other day. And I think he did like $1 million in premium his first year or something, which is insane with little to no P&C experience. And when Steven and I asked him, what do you think the key to that, achieving that goal was? And he said, just from 9 to 5, all I did was sales. And I think there's something to that. And you know what? I'm gonna share a quick story too. So I just spoke to someone from Patrick Bet David's team, and for those of you that don't know, PBD had he was owner of an insurance agency. It was mainly life insurance, and he had like a big $100+ million exit. And I spoke to somebody on his team, and I said, for somebody in my position where I'm at building a scratch agency, what do you think is as the agency owner, what should my main focus be? Should it be hiring and finding new talent to build a team? Should it be processes and procedures and training the team? Should it be doing digital marketing and all that stuff? Should it be sales? What's your literally before I could even finish, sales was the answer. And literally now I don't know how many people, Steven, have told us that sales between 9 and 5 is the most important thing to do. So I think having clarity in that vision that as the agency owner, especially when you're first starting out and building a scratch agency, focus on sales and revenue.
Yep. Amen.
That's it.
Amen. Bring it back right down to the basics.
The process also is never perfect. You've got to think about that. What I tell our team is, look, when it comes to process, I have 2 goals. Remove friction for the team member, remove friction for the customer. For example, one of our team members had this automatic email because we were having problems with the wrong address coming in. But then she creates this great email, and it asks like 30 questions. And I was like, that's terrible. She goes, well, why? I said, if I'm an agent reading that, I'm going down the street. My brain is overloaded on the email you just sent me. Instead, hey, can you just click on this quick link here to verify this information for us? Do a type form, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. Instead, this long email with 5 paragraphs, because it's like Donald Miller says, after like 3 options, the brain shuts down. You only have a certain number of time on your website to capture that visitor to understand that, hey, we are the guide, they are the hero. And so we've got to simplify our message. And that is not part of simplifying our message. Just like when our team comes on board, they have to do 2 things. They have to read Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, and they have to read Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer. before their day one. Those are the two conditions they have to meet.
I like that. Wow.
And in that way, they truly understand that we are an educational organization based on those books and how we're building this culture.
Oh, for sure. And
Same thing too. Hey, you're fully remote. How do you know when people are working? I said, it's the easiest thing in the world. All you got to do is go to the CRM and you'll know exactly what they're doing and what they're not doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you're setting that all up in the front and all the expectations and everything right there.
Yep.
Chris, thank you very much.
I even use my CRM in the interview process.
There you go.
We go through a 30-minute screen share. Hey, this is what the CRM looks like. This is what your day-to-day looks like. I want them to know how easy we make the systems so that systems are not a reason why they don't enjoy their job.
Chris, as we look to wrap this up, I'm excited to ask you this question. If you've listened to a few episodes, it's a staple question for us. If you had to go back to the beginning after being from captive to independent, now running a very successful niche agency, you had to go back to day one of your career and start over from nothing. What's something that you would do differently?
From day one, actually, I probably would have done the same thing. Gone to work for Liberty Mutual, phenomenal company I worked for 7 years. Probably would have spent 7 years there. I would have spent 2 years, and I would have gone flood only instead of doing it in 2019. I would have done it like in 2011, 2012, when private flood was just developing and just, all these systems weren't available. I would have done it niching twice as sooner as I possibly could have, because we would have been twice as profitable.
And you know what that can tie that into? For anybody listening to this podcast now, waiting to take the jump, waiting to go off and start their own agency, waiting to own their own future, do it now. What are you waiting for? Right? And I think the three of us here who have kind of been through something similar like that can attest to that. Chris, thanks again for joining us on the podcast, man. Tons of good information, tons of education is no surprise.
Hey, you talk about Scratch Agency, and I'll leave this with new Scratch Agency owners. One thing I recommend is checking out Donald Miller's podcast. He talks about, almost similar to Profit First, of the 5 bank accounts you need as a new agency owner, of understanding, hey, here's where I need to move money in taxes, profitability, whatever. I wish I would have known that when I was starting an agency. We could have been profitable a lot more sooner because I would have had more control because I knew kind of what I was doing. So definitely check out him or the book Profit First. I think it will really help you as a new business owner. It's hard enough being a new agent, new scratch agency, much less a new business owner as well.
Yeah, I was actually, when I started my agency, someone recommended Profit First to me too, and I read it and I would second that. Chris, for anybody who wants to get in touch with you, just to pick your brain on stuff or maybe get that link set up, whatever it is, so that you can help them out on the flood side, learn a little bit more about what we talked about today, what's a good way for them to do that?
Our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. You can email us flood@floodinsuranceguru.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. Our YouTube channel also, if you want to watch those videos, it's Flood Insurance Guru. I'm usually wearing a poop hat, just as happens.
And everybody listening to this, go check out his YouTube videos. They're super impressive and absolutely crushing the video game. Everybody.
Hey, that son with the pig, where the pig flies.
There you go. There you go. You got the poop head, the pig. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. But most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.